My point was when they go back and forth and she says, you're inexperienced in foreign policy, and it shows.
That, I think, was the big moment of the night. I think that was the best line of the night. I think Nikki Haley had the best debate of the night in terms of the expectations game. That's often how debates are judged. She came in, she'd been having trouble differentiating herself. She was strong on foreign policy. She was somebody who bridged the foreign policy of the Republican Party, and she went hard after Vivek on experience, and it really left
She has it.
She's got it. You know, UN ambassador, former South Carolina governor, UN ambassador, and somebody who was not kind of tiptoeing around, Vladimir Putin as Donald Trump did and as some of his acolytes do. So I thought that was a very great, strong moment from Nikki Haley last night.
So he shared center stage with Governor DeSantis, but we heard more from him. He was, I guess, the exclamation point at center stage. How do you think he did?
I thought he was a character of a person, truly. I mean, he jumped in, he cut off people while they were talking, and he was factually incorrect on several things, but he just, again, he really did model himself after Trump, and that's what he was really going for. He's going for VP. It was very clear. And the cheers that he got was mostly because he said he was the greatest president of our time. And so I think, pointing out some of these issues that he had or some of these, falsities he had is important because he really just became, again, a character of a person.
What happened to Chris Christie last night?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think Chris Christie, it's difficult for him in this race because people see him a bit as a flip-flopper. With Donald Trump, was supporting him and now coming out against him so strongly. But what Christie did is say, we have to take on Trump. He was one of the few people really to directly go after Trump, to go after January 6th, including Mike Pence, obviously. But you did see Christie say, I'm not going to support Trump, go after Trump in a way that the other candidates do seem afraid to do, even though Trump is at the top of the polls.
Counterpoint on that. I thought Chris Christie had a good debate.
You did?
I do. I think his personality showed. I think his pugilism showed. I think he's a happy warrior.
Pugilism at
early in the morning.
18
Come on.
in the morning.
A little boxing. Look, so I think actually, look, is he sending a message that the base wants to hear? No. Does he have the courage of his convictions? Does that resonate authentically? Yes. And for what it's worth, the two former U.S. attorneys on the stage are the ones who have the courage to say that Donald Trump, being indicted so many times for trying to overturn an election is a non-starter. But so, look, he's not trying to give people what they want. He's not pandering to the base. But I thought he was strong and engaging and had a good debate last night as a result.
What about Ron DeSantis? I mean, he came into this as the highest polling person on the stage, still 30, 40%, depending upon which poll you check, behind the front runner. Did he do anything to, I guess, change the descent of his polling numbers or the stagnant status of his campaign?
No, I think he just sort of skated by. I think he got some applause when he talked about COVID and the things he did in Florida. That's where he did shine. Otherwise, he was pretty, non-essential, I would say, out there on the stage. But he really lucked out when Vivek honestly made a fool of himself by plagiarizing Barack Obama, by incorrectly talking about the American Revolution was won because of our Constitution, which, by the way, came 13 years later, and then decided to say that we should go ahead and ban the Department of Education or get rid of it. I think that's pretty telling, but he maybe needs an education there. So I think DeSantis really did kind of luck out in the fact that what was supposed to be a DeSantis versus Vivek ended up not panning out.
Weirdly disrespectful of DeSantis' status as the highest polling person on the stage, that he was sort of ignored. Now, I think he was able to use that to his benefit. He was able to stay in his lane, stick to his talking points, but he didn't really break out, and he wasn't rewarded with kind of the attention that typically a front runner on the stage would be.
I agree.
Abortion.
So the people on the stage agree that he did the right thing, but he's been heckled as he's out campaigning. Does that endorsement lead to any support among the base?
Not when you still have people like Donald Trump who are saying that he could have done something, and people in the far-right media who are still saying that Pence could have done something to stop the election. So they're perpetuating this attack on Mike Pence, and you're not necessarily going to win over those people by being common sense on the stage. So I think it's smart that the candidates up there were supporting Mike Pence, and they should be, but it doesn't mean it's going to change what the far-right voters are going to say.
It's also the right thing to do. Mike Pence did the right thing unquestionably. He deserves enormous credit for that.
Great movie.
And the fact,
Do the right thing.
Yeah, and the fact that I think the vast majority of candidates up there didn't shimmy around that, but simply said, yes, he did the right thing by our country, by our Constitution, which has the added advantage of being true. That's good.
He got the most time. Wasn't that interesting?
Yeah. And I think the most passionate response from him was on Ukraine. in which he defended spending more money, continuing to support Ukraine. But if you look at the polls, especially for Republican voters specifically, 71% do not support sending more money. Again, this is one of those instances in which he thinks he's doing the right thing, just may not play well with the base.
But there you saw a very substantive debate about policy on the stage, and you had people like Nikki Haley and Mike Pence and Chris Christie making moral cases for the importance of standing by Ukraine against Russian aggression. And then you had some candidates who were trying to be Trump light, trying to sort of say, well, it's not really our fight, and playing sort of footsie with that isolationist impulse.
But they also made the case for why it matters to Americans. And I think that's really where they targeted the voters, right? They were able to appeal to them by saying, here's why it should matter to you. Here's the impact that the fall of Ukraine has on us as a nation, us as a society, and on the global stage, obviously, as well.
All right. Everybody stay here. We will hear from the voters who watched the debate. What did they see last night? As you say, you had a bad night. The voters think differently.
I'm not shocked. I mean, he took up airtime. He was someone that people probably didn't know going in. Maybe some of them did, and they kept hearing from him over and over again. I think when everyone attacks you, you appear like the front runner. And so I do understand. And then he also acted almost as a Trump surrogate, saying, not only defending the president time and time again, but also repeating his lines. So I'm not surprised that people liked that, especially in the absence of the president on the stage, the former president on the stage.
He's amplifying a lot of conservative media talking points, and that creates its own feedback loop. But look, Nikki Haley did pretty well in that hand raise as well. And she's been someone who's been having tough time getting traction. So I think that was notable as well.
And good to see, too. I mean, she deserved to have those hands raised by those Iowa voters. She was poised and she was well prepared. And she really did appeal to the human side of things, especially when she talked about abortion, but other issues, too, about Ukraine. And I was really impressed by her. She was probably my takeaway.
Michael, one element here that got a lot of reaction in the room was when it was the show of hands question about who would pardon former President Trump if he's convicted. Vivek Ramaswamy raised his hand high, and that worked well. As we said, he also said he was the greatest president in the 21st century, so it works well in a Trump supporter
And then Pence
room.
just explained how a pardon actually works. Yeah. He's done them.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a lot of red meat thrown out by Ramaswamy to the base. I mean, and plus he's a great salesman. I mean, he's just a pitch guy. And he's got these lines like burn coal, use gas, and this kind of thing. And so saying that he'd pardon Trump is just what his people want to hear. I mean, he was about gods, guns, gas, coal, and the truth is, at the end of the debate, I think that the benefactor was Trump by not being there. He just benefits from the chaos that we saw last night.
But to say that you're going to pardon Trump, that means that Trump would then have to accept the guilt. And then you're saying he'd be convicted first.
Which
so there's
Pence
a whole
pointed out.
Right, Pence did point it out. But then to go even a step further, by saying that you're going to offer him a pardon, it then means that you also agree that he's guilty, and then he has to accept it by saying that he is guilty. So if you really think through that, is that the best approach?
Also, trying to overturn an election to stay into power is somehow legitimate. It's been normalized.
Normalized, yeah.
Lest we forget.
Everybody, thank you. We have a lot more to talk about from last night's debate.